Bolsonaro's allies?
So there is currently a major geographical divide in Brazil. The northeast, that is poorer with some large cities, but with some poorer hinterlands. It's a region that developed the most during the time when Lula was president 12 years ago when he left office. So that part of the country voted overwhelmingly for Lula, whereas the center-south, that is more dependent on agro-exporting with some industrial regions, including São Paulo, leaning towards Bolsonaro. And however, the South, certain parts of the South, including São Paulo City, where I'm based, was crucial for delivering Lula's victory, because those cities suffered a lot with the pandemic, and therefore those who voted for Bolsonaro 4 years ago, some of the votes now went for Lula, which means that there is a space for enlarging Lula's coalition. As you mentioned, some of the Bolsonaro supporters got seats in the Congress, like Pazuello, who was in charge of the worst period of the pandemic. And he certainly represents, among others, parts of the far right, parts of the Brazilian society who's on the far right. But we political scientists here in Brazil believe that that's a minority in Brazilian society, up to 20% of the electorate, particularly the electorate that is located in the hinterlands that are heavily dependent on agribusiness, plus some large parts of our biggest cities where the evangelicals have quite strong influence. So those are the main basis for Bolsonarism, this far-right movement that Jair Bolsonaro has led and is likely to keep leading even after leaving power.
So just on the evangelical Christians, whom I believe they've almost doubled or even tripled their numbers since Lula was in power, does that present a problem for him in terms of finding resonance with some of the policies that he's advancing? And you spoke about some of the self-serving politicians or self-serving conservatives, as they've been called. What language would President Lula would then have to be speaking with them? Would there be some horse trading needed?
I think Lula will have to share power, and particularly with the evangelicals in Congress that have a very strong behavioral, cultural agenda. They are very much like the American evangelicals in terms of cultural wars. So what should be Lula's strategy, and what I think that will be his strategy? He must leave aside cultural wars issues and focus on the economy. I think there is much more agenda, overlapping of agendas, if Lula focuses on recovering the economy, because Brazil now faces high rates of unemployment and not so high rates of inflation, certainly lower than in parts of the global north, but is likely higher than in Asia and other parts of the global south. Also, Brazil lost lots of industrial jobs in the last years, and the evangelicals, as they increased from 20% of the population to about 33% of the population, according to the best data available nowadays, they will have a say in any policy. So the issues for which they are sensitive must therefore be left aside by Lula and Workers' Party, because they have so conflicted views on issues like abortion, the role of the state in schools, the role of state in delivering certain aspects of social policy that implies in behavioral issues. So if Lula really focuses on the economic agenda, I think he tends to avoid conflict with part of the population and part of the representatives that, like it or not, they have a much stronger say nowadays in Brazil than before in Brazilian politics.